All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you're listening from. It's another episode of ours today. I guess we don't need introduction anymore. If you're the first time listening to us, my name is Tunde and this is Nigel. Welcome to our humble podcast. So our topic today is the masks we wear, the authenticity and adaptation in life's journey. So we'll be discussing about the roles we play in the society, how authentic we are as individuals, and how adaptive we are as individuals. So Nigel was the one who prepared this topic. So I guess you already have something in mind you want to talk about. Do you want to get off?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the introduction, and also good day because we cover all the time zones just with the two of us, right? So that's great.
Yeah.
What I like about this topic is that it kind of reminds me of discussion I had in the past about playing a role, and quite often we have a discussion about being authentic and you should be yourself, but at the end you're not always doing that. If you, for example, someone asks you, who are you? You're probably going to say, I'm a salesman, or I'm a father, or I'm a football coach, right? That's, it says something about what you do or how you act. That's a bit like an identity you take on. And that's not really who you are per se as a person, but that's something you do as a person, which people will see you do and then say, well, he's the football coach or he's the dad or whatever. So when people talk about being authentic, I always remind them of the fact that there are a lot of people, for example, which that's the most visual way of seeing the identity is a uniform. So you see a police officer in a uniform. As soon as the police officer puts on the uniform, I recently spoke to a police officer and he said, well, as soon as I walk around in my uniform, everyone looks at me. Everyone is a bit worried, like, did I do something wrong? Or curious, what's going to happen? Or why is this police officer here? Or just interested? And look, there's a. So as soon as he puts on the officer after the uniform, he is the police officer. So even if he would, if you would put on the same uniform, you would walk around, everyone would go like, hey, you're a police officer. While you didn't do the 2 or 3 years or studying to become a police officer that it takes to become a police officer where I live. So I think when we go to our jobs and we're not wearing a uniform, we're also putting on a mental uniform to play the role we're being paid to perform, right? So I think that being authentic should have a bit of a volume dial. So you can be authentic, but you can't always be exactly yourself because sometimes you're proposed to play a role. So if I'm parenting, I am playing the role of a father because I am the
Mhm.
father, which is also part of me being an authentic self. But sometimes you also see if I would stick to me and my feelings, I would be very comforting and say it's going to be okay. But as a father, I also sometimes need to say, listen, this is an issue that arrived in your life. I want you to learn something from it. I'm going to let you endure a little bit of suffering. We talked about cycling through the rain. Um, so if I would be true to my feelings, I would say, no, I'll bring you with the car. But I want to teach my kids something. So switching between those identities, I think that's part of life. I think that wearing a uniform makes it easier because whether you like it or not, if you put on a police officer's uniform, people are going to say, hey, you're a police officer and going to treat you like that. So based on the identity you put on, I think you're getting a response. So to some of my team members, I actually used the phrase, "If you work at the circus, you have to dress up like a clown," and that's a bit of the thing. If you work in a certain area, you'll have to behave more or less uh, to the standards that that environment asks from you. You need to be that person that is needed. So I'm gonna drop the statement here. No, you can always be your authentic self. Sometimes you just have to act. I do believe that if the where you have to act and where your authentic self is, if that gap is like huge, it's gonna cost a lot of energy. That's something I can elaborate on later with personal experience, where some environments are draining, um, and that's the discussion you see a lot online. I guess that people want to be their true selves and maybe even lose the they have been pretending to be something there that they are not so long that they don't even know who they are. You know, I need to explore myself, and then they go to a retreat on Bali and just have a nice holiday. But I think there are ways to figure out who you are. I think there are eras in your life where you can figure out who you are. I think midlife crisis is a bit of that, where you come to terms with the fact that yeah, you spend like half your life, and um, now you get to spend the other half, and then you ask yourself, am I going to keep doing this what I've been doing or not? So a lot of things. What do you say?
I totally agree with you with uh, because we since we were born, we were supposed to play a specific role, so we kept on acting. So, for example, a kid is supposed to act this way. As a child, you are not supposed to do this. You are supposed to do this. And as a student, you're supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do this. As a worker, if you work in a company, they hire you to play a specific role. We hire you for this position. You have to do this, and you get married as an husband. You have to do this, and you don't have to do this. This is what wives do. This is what mothers do. This is what fathers do. This is what grandparents are supposed to do. This is what you are not supposed to do. So all those things are acting. So we keep acting. And when it
Yeah,
comes to being authentic, it's really vague in my mind. I don't think anybody can be authentic because we don't even know who we are. We just arrived on this planet, one way or the other, trying to figure out the kind of person we are day in, day out. And every time you learn something new about yourself, so you will never know exactly who you are or the kind of person you are until you die. Even if you live 100 extra years, you will keep finding out new things. And here's the thing, you can always, when you find out something about yourself, you can always learn something new and improve or teach something or gain more knowledge or gain more skills um, in terms of being a human being, not a professional skill in this case. But the fact that you can improve, you can learn something new means you can always change. So being your true self cannot be, or being authentic is not really authentic because you can always change. Change is constant. You can always change who you are. You can always change. And I'm not saying talking about changing who you are. It's not about changing your sex or something, but changing the kind of
yeah,
person. So for example, you can say I can say I'm an introvert, right? But if I spend a lot of money to find a really good coach or psychologist that can really help me become an extrovert, maybe I could become an extrovert over like 10 years of extreme training. Um, that is something that can happen. I don't know. I'm just giving an example. So, does that mean I was born an introvert and then I can become an extrovert along the way? Does that mean I'm not being myself? So being authentic, in its definition, I don't think we can be authentic in ourselves, which sometimes, but there are some extreme cases that I see where, for example, which usually with the politicians, right? They when they need your votes, they are not themselves. They want to tell you what you want to hear, right? So they are not being very authentic in this sense. And this is one of the reasons why I would say people love someone like Trump, and also people hate him for who he is because he's always speaking his mind without thinking. And people love him for that. Some people also hate him for that because he's not politically correct or whatever, which statements he says sometimes are very extreme. So there are some extreme cases where people are really not themselves, they lose themselves, they are always acting. And when people smile, sometimes you see fake smiles coming out of their faces.
Yeah.
So those kind of scenarios, people are not really in their own self. I would say not authentic in that sense, in terms of their act, right?
But sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but that's an interesting take on this, because that basically also means that the only time we think someone is authentic is when they have their masking organized in such a way that you believe them, that you believe the mask they put on. Uh, and that brings me a short intermezzo. A lot of discussion about people having an agenda, right? So you go to the office
Hmm.
and then you meet all these people around you, and they have they're doing something, and then you go like, but he's doing that to make career, he's doing that to improve his position, or they have an agenda. And I always was like, well, everyone has an agenda. Don't you have an agenda? But that would be weird, because maybe your agenda is to survive, or to just earn enough money without too much stress, or to indeed improve your position, to make career. That's an agenda. You should have an agenda, and you
Hmm.
should uh, know that everyone is putting on that mask to try to fulfill that. So maybe the leaders that we trust have their masking in order, that it's close enough that within what they are to believe them, but we need to accept that they're all doing, or they all play their role to obtain your
And
vote.
also, if the masking fits in what we believe, you tend to
Yeah,
like someone who does almost something similar like as you.
yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
I don't know the psychological evidence of that, but
Mhm.
I believe we attract people that do something in the way we like, or something that we do also. So, for example, like with the introversion and extroversion example I made earlier, it's very rare for you to see an extrovert and an introvert to be close friends. It's always extrovert plus extrovert best friends, and introvert plus introvert best friends.
Yeah,
The
I
extreme cases
yeah,
doesn't really happen.
I think with the introvert and extroversion, this the interesting part is that introverts, they need to be extrovert to communicate with the outside world, so they will always teach themselves to be extrovert. But there's also a group of extroverts that learns to be introverted to fall back on themselves, because if you're always relying on the outside world to get the energy, that's a problem, because you're codependent, right? So I think extrovert people that learn how to deal with introvert feelings, or ways to get some energy, is also interesting. But you might be right. I'm trying to figure out if I know. I mean, I'm married to an extrovert wife while being introvert myself. That means that I sometimes have to accept the fact that she wants to just send. So we will go out for a walk. Of the like 30-minute walking, she will talk to 25 minutes to me. Um, and I know this is her way of venting. She needs to vent. So I try to listen, but my introvert mind, something goes like, and she's talking. Don't let her hear this, but I don't really hear what she's saying. But I know she needs to talk, so I let her talk, and I go like, "Hey, there's the bird. What should I do this afternoon? Oh, there's all kinds of and then music in my head, and all kinds of things happening." And then she's still, yeah, and his coworker, and she went by, and now we have a project, and it's exciting, and that's a bit of the disconnect. On the other hand, she also knows that I sometimes need my space, and that she leaves me, and then I can be just me, being me, because I kind of like that. And I think that's the benefit of becoming older. You start to learn how this works, and maybe
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
you're able
people.
to compromise on
Yeah,
and also understand each other. That's why you're able to
yeah,
get things to work.
yeah. But I think my best friends are all introverts. So you were probably right about that. I don't mind my wife being extroverted. Um, but my kids, for example, one is very introverted and one is extroverted. And what I see my kids doing, if my daughter, which is introvert, wants to have something done in a public place and my son is around, which is very extroverted, she will ask him to do it for her. And he will be happy to do it for her simply because he likes the engagement anyway. So if she wants to order a drink and she doesn't feel like asking it herself, she goes, "Hey, can you ask me? Can you ask get me a drink?" And you will go through through the restaurant, not even wait for the waiter. He will go to the waiter and say, "My sister wants a drink. Can you get it?" So he likes the engagement so much, and she is so far away from that. She rather not see any people ever. Uh,
I, 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 as- I was just thinking with what you just mentioned. I think one of the reasons why uh, relationship between an extrovert and an introvert would work is because you are both committed to each other. And if you can learn to accept each other and compromise and understand each other, then things will work out. But as friends, it's a little bit more complicated because if you are a friend as an introvert to an extrovert, it takes away a lot of your energy. And then bring it back to our topic of acting,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it takes a lot of effort for you to act
yeah.
and try to fit in as an extrovert and an extrovert trying to cool down to an introvert level. So it takes a lot of energy from both of you.
Yep.
So it would, and since you don't live together, you don't see each other every time. So those kind of things will kind of fade away and then you pull apart and you go separate ways. But if you are both introvert or you are both extrovert as friends,
Yeah.
you find things to do in common all the time.
I just realized I have some extrovert friends and I do see them, but I like the Myers Briggs type indicator, and it discusses the introvert extroversion as well. But it also has a bit of in the psychoanalysis from Jung, a bit of a difference between uh, the amount of energy you get from external contacts like extroverts from that theory get, while introverts will bleed. And it's a scale, right? So some of the types that they discuss are more like the 60% towards um, extroverted or something. Um, so I think that the people I know that are extremely extroverted, I can spend a few hours with them and then I'm drained. You're absolutely right. I
Yeah,
love these people to be in my life because they bring me a type of energy I don't have, and they give me a perspective I don't have. But after a few hours, I'm drained. So I can't have them in my life all the time. Um, I'm very sorry for all my extrovert friends, but I can't. I need to. I recharge my battery, and the only way to do that is in without people. No more people for me. So yeah. On the other hand, I understand that they need the interaction to bounce off their ideas and to discuss
yeah,
how they feel and everything. And I love that about them because um, that openness is it's easier, right? So with having introvert friends, you always go like, "Hey, how are you doing? Yeah, yeah, I'm good." But how are you really doing? And then you basically ask them something they don't really want to tell you. They
mhm,
sometimes learn to, or they know they need to, but that's the hard part about being introverted. Translating that energy or that feeling into a verbal interaction is not easy. So my son will tell you how he feels in exact words easily. He knows how he feels all the time. And sometimes he cannot really say what's causing the feeling, but he can explain how he feels. And if you go to my daughter and you ask, "How are you?" She will go like, "Why do you even ask?" No, I just want to know how you feel. And then she would say, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I said, well, that's weird, right? If you just check in with your
Yeah.
body, how's your body doing? My body's good. Okay, so your body's feeling fine. Now, how's your mind? Busy. With what? Things. So it's, for me, it's you have to, maybe that's why introverted people sometimes come across as little bit more mysterious, but she will need to learn how to interact with the world. She will have to learn to put on the mask. And he, being fully introverted, needs to sometimes slow it down and be less like that, just to keep his environment intact mentally, because he can be a lot.
Yeah. And looking at the example of your kids that you just made with um, acting and being yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the society doesn't really accept or doesn't want us to be ourselves, right? Yeah, because you just mentioned that your daughter will have to learn
Yeah.
and put on a mask to learn how to discuss or interact with the outside world, and your son has to also learn to cool things off a little bit. So they both cannot be themselves. Uh,
No, I'm afraid not, because if she would be allowed to be like this, she wouldn't be able to interact with the outside world at all, because she simply doesn't
yeah,
want to. And if we allow him to be as he would unfiltered be, he would probably. And it's sometimes happening with his friends. He's young, so but he would rolling over everyone, right? So there would be the room would be filled just with him, because he has a big personality, he has a big presence, um, and then yeah, that's with relationships. You have to make compromises. So that's why I
yeah,
think. But the question here, if I read back of what we prepared, is also maybe we know we have established the fact we need to wear masks. We do that, or sometimes you even put on a uniform. But then how can you be as authentic within that space, right? So putting on a uniform or wearing a mask is basically limited in the space you have. But within that, you can still be somewhat authentic, maybe. Um,
mm,
I must say, I'm just gonna ramble on. Just interrupt me if you want. But from my personal experience, is that being authentic while being in an environment where the space is a bit too small for you to fit in an authentic way, you will always cross that border, right? So there's a bit of an implicit, not written space. So this is the office, and we always behave like this in the office. And then you start behaving a little bit outside that square box of space where everyone fits in, and there you're going to be the odd one. There you're going to be
yeah.
the one that's and I know for a fact that where my wife works, they
That's
uh,
why we have HR, right?
to smash you back into the box. Oh no! Well, some companies have identified the fact that if everyone moves into too narrow area, uh, stuff like creativity or innovation comes to a halt. So they figured that we need to have different thinking people inside the company, and we're actually going to mark them. We're going to make a system to mark our creative people, which is a bit weird, but that's how corporate structure works. So they come up with the term of divergent. So if your brain works a little bit different than most, and they figure that out because they allow you to be a bit more authentic or speak up on things, they gonna mark you as divergent, and they put the divergence into a group structure where they say, well, we have a problem, maybe you can fix something out there. Yeah, you go be divergent, go. And this doesn't work at all, because it the first step is set. Okay, we have people that are just doing their thing and they fit in because for them it's easier to fit in, and we have some people that have a hard time fitting in, and their brain works a little bit different. And then they make them sort of special, and then they put them in a room, and they say, well, good luck with being special, maybe you can find some. And that's also difficult, because on the one hand you think, oh, that's great, they get to wear another mask, or they get to put off their mask for a little bit.
Hmm.
But actually they don't, because they separate it and they make it special. It's not part of expanding the actual space in the company to be more authentic or more yourself. They just let you do that a few hours a week, and then you have to fit in, because the system is rigid. The company has been like this for ages, and culture
Yeah,
doesn't change that easy.
I read something online. I'm not sure how true it is. It's it's like pilots don't go to therapy just because once they start going to therapy and they say something weird, the therapist can report them, and then they would never be able to fly anymore because there's always cases of pilots getting depressed and then crashing the plane. So they don't want to go to therapy, so on out of fear of losing their job.
I'd rather have them go to therapy and lose a job instead of flying me around depressed.
Well, that's part of being authentic. If they want to go to therapy, you have to be yourself, right, and let everything out,
Yeah, yeah.
even if you have no
Dark
intention, bad
feelings
intention,
or whatever.
or
Yeah, yeah.
anything, or you're just telling it how it is. But the therapist is also human. He or she might misinterpret what the pilot was saying
Yeah.
and say, "Oh, this guy is probably going through depression, and he might commit a mass suicide very soon," and then he's fired.
Yeah, that's the downside. Like with the divergent example from my wife's work, um, I I don't think I am good at fitting in, especially in office environments, corporate environments. So I've always put on my mask. I actually, for a while, I worked at a bank. I had to wear a suit that felt like my uniform. I always called it my uniform. And then I acted like I'm a banker. I work at a bank, so I do banky stuffs. And it never felt like me at all. Didn't feel at home at all. Uh, and the problem is, I always have problems with those boundaries. Whenever I see things that are not right, I will speak up, and that brought me into trouble a lot of times. On the other hand, it's always has been the reason why somehow I get tolerated and people keep me around. So there's a bit of a hate love thing there. Because of the speaking up, I noticed that people say, "Well, yeah, you always have a different opinion," uh, and we kind of like that, but we don't, because it hurts. But no one else is doing it, so we need you to do it, but not too much. Sometimes, and then and I also noticed that sometimes I get stuck into my own internal loop, and then um, yeah. So I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've realized that I shouldn't be a fixed or permanent part of that. So I become an entrepreneur and start my own business a decade ago, and that's basically the solution I found to be able to put on the mask as an external person. You come in, you put on the mask, but you can also put it off because people expect it. They pay me to sometimes put it off and be the one that comes up with the different opinion, or be the one that comes in with the new ideas. And I think that's part of my journey, where I found a way to be more and more authentic and close to myself, and switching with the masking and not, because I know I have to do that. It's normal, but I don't have to do it as often as I used to. And
Hmm.
people accept it more that I have an outspoken opinion or a different opinion, simply because I am external. I am hired to be that. So I'm not part of the company. I don't work here. I'm hired to do a job, and then I don't have issues with HR, for example, which is good. um, but how's that for you? Do you have personal masking experience? I mean, let's go back to the fact that you are a chameleon on a cultural side, because you come from Africa, you moved to Asia, you have to deal with it, and now you are in a Western country. So then I can imagine there is some masking going on there to fit in wherever you are, right?
Um, uh, I don't think I have that chameleon power to actually automatically fit in that sense. I remember one of my job in when I was in Asia, right? That was like almost 10 years ago. Uh, Probably my first job then. My boss then noticed something and he told me, hey, if you want to get a promotion, you should never question any task that is given to you. Just say yes and agree and just do it. So he noticed that I'm always asking questions and was always questioning things. Why this? Why that? Or should I do it a different way? He said, you should just take it, get it done, and submit it. Don't question it. Don't do anything. That's how you get promotion. If not, you remain in the same place. So that was a little bit difficult for me to to fit in or to wear a mask and accept and adapt to the environment. But as probably there's something we say in my culture that if you put soap and leaf together, the leaf becomes the soap, right? So if you stay in a place for a very long time, then you kind of find a way to adapt and wear a mask and understand, okay, this is what this means. If this happens, this is what it means actually.
Yeah.
So if for example, if you work with Asians a couple of times, they will say yes, and yes actually means no, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Just like my boss said. So instead of them saying, if you discuss something with them, and instead of and you ask, oh, do you understand this? And they say yes, yes. They actually don't understand anything. So
Uh,
so you have to
no, because it's
uh,
I always understood it as impolite to say no, right? So they don't want to be impolite; they want to be
yeah, they
polite.
don't want to be
So
unpolite.
you'll have to rephrase your question.
Yeah,
Um,
you have to rephrase or ask them to uh, brief you again what you just mentioned.
yeah.
So that's one of the things that I got to learn as I was living there, and that is also putting up a mask and trying to fit in the environment, get used to the culture, get used to the way of life, and understanding and accepting this is how they live and this is how you have to find a way to adjust and blend into the environment because you cannot always win in everything. So
Uh,
and there you are the one that is living that you have to accept what the environment is, and that could be some kind of masking or acting in its sense, so to speak. But I don't believe I'm the best at masking or wearing a mask in every situation. I think there are people that are extremely good at adapting very quickly at wherever they find themselves. They can blend in. They can. I think probably most extroverts are very good at that. Introverts are not so good at blending in very easily. I probably most spies are extroverts. I think if you're an introvert, it's difficult to be a spy because you have to blend in, and
yeah,
unless you have to be a quiet person, and
I think it's that part is also tied into if you go back to MBTI personal traits to maybe the type of people that are also very good at reading people. And they could be introvert and extrovert, but the extrovert has a benefit of being capable of using all their capacity towards the outside world. I always understood that the introvert will first have an internal discussion and then share that with the world, while an extrovert
yeah.
can do that directly. So you basically have a much. That's why in sales you will probably find maybe 80-90% of people are extrovert because for them um, communicating with the outside world and it's easier. So I would understand that. Um, on the other hand, if you are introvert, yeah, depending on the role, I don't know, but from a social perspective, I think you might be right. Yeah. This,
But in IT, most people in IT are introverts.
hmm,
Thank God. So
hmm. Yeah, that helps. It's also
Yeah.
when I am a certified MBTI trainer, so I sometimes get to coach groups of people. And then when the average is introvert, the less introvert will say I'm extrovert, while the environment when I take the test and I go through the typing process, and I always find out that much more people there are than introvert. For example, in an IT team, I usually find that everyone is introverted. And then 1/3 of the introverts will say, I'm extroverted, based on the explanation, because they feel like they're less introverted than the others.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
also
yeah.
funny. While if you put the salespeople in there, then the whole paradigm switches, and then they go, I'm extremely introverted because he's so obnoxiously loud. My God.
Yeah.
So I think that reminds me of the experiment with the fleas. When you have fleas and they jump like this high, and you put them in a jar and you put a lid on the jar, and then they will keep jumping against the lid, and then after a while you can put the lid off and they won't jump out because they won't jump higher than the lid. It kind of
Yeah.
brought my
Uh,
idea. Yeah.
I think 3 or 4 years ago, we were sharing office space with another team in the office, and that team were mostly marketing and sales team
Oh,
for a different company, but we shared the same office space. So everybody in our company always kind of not like complain, but like surprised that these guys are really loud when they greet you. They say hello, good morning, and on top of their voices, and they were always surprised that these guys are very loud. But the IT guys, they when they see each other, they say, "Hi, good morning. Hi, good morning. Hi, good morning." Very quiet. Our office is always very quiet. But when this guy is walking, very loud. So it's a
they fill
huge
the room.
difference.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
huge difference. And God knows how much masking they have to do. I don't know. Maybe because they were expected to be sales, and sales is always loud, and so maybe at the end of the day they come home and go like, "Ah, oh, I'm happy my day's over. I don't have to scream anymore." So wouldn't be very sustainable, I guess. But yeah, that's interesting.
I once, in terms of masking, just I just remembered I was at an event in Malaysia and I met someone, and this person is a coach, a sport coach, right?
Hmm.
So this is someone who is always using microphone and has like 10 or 20 people jumping and doing whatever at the gym and giving them instructions. And so that must be an extrovert role, right? But at the event, this person totally switched to an introvert. And when I met this person and we are discussing about our daily lives and everything, and this person was telling me, "Oh, this is what I do, and this is what I do," and I was like, "Really? I've seen you 2 days. You don't talk to anybody at this event, and there were about 500 people at the event, right? And you don't talk to anybody. You just sit down. Once the event is when we have a break, you go out to eat, and you come back. You just sit down again. You don't talk to anybody. It's impossible for you to be a sport coach
Yeah,
and then be this reserved to yourself. And the person was like, I've been always talking to. It's my job to always talk to everybody and always put on a fake smile and always doing this and always doing that.
yeah,
It's like everything was an act, and this is you just trying to be yourself
yeah.
and taking the time off and relaxing. You are not really enjoying what you do for a job.
In work settings, when we go through these kinds of discussion about introversion, extroversion, I also get a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're so extroverted, and you must be an extrovert." Well, I'm not, but that's also because in my role as if I'm a manager or a project manager or whatever, you have to stand up, you have to be there, you have to. And that's what I do. I mean, that's goal oriented. I know what needs to be done to make it happen, so I do that. And after that, when I close the lid of my laptop or I slam the door of my car when I drive off, uh, there's always a bit of the reluctance, like, oh, it's over. And I had long periods of time where I had like 8 hours of, especially in the COVID time, of online meetings, and that was draining. Um, and sometimes when I had like 1 hour of not no meetings, I would just go sit somewhere and try to recover and get my head together and think about what was happening and process it. Because if I don't have processing time, it just uh, you get depleted, and it's hard to. I mean, I also think that if I have a meeting with someone, that this person deserves that energy, right? So I was
Hmm.
responsible for a team and services and people, and you want to be the person giving them more energy out of the meeting that they got in of it. But it was always my energy that they got, and then I had to find ways to. That's why we started walking during lunchtime to recharge the battery, so my wife could vent and I could listen to the birds. Something like that. No, but I can
That
imagine that
helps.
the sports coach is a very analytical person. So, and he uses the outgoing part of him as an instrument to
Yeah.
make the change happen. So that's I think that switching, uh, yeah, that's important. But you could also see that as a mask. I have a question though. Maybe I'm also curious because when I was reading this, we are discussing this in a work setting, and but there's, especially for the younger generations, there's something going on around identity, where there's a lot of focus on being your authentic self, and that identification process of yourself means that others have to accept you as you are. Well, we also have been discussing the fact that when we go to the office, we can't be ourselves because we have to act like the common ground of the office. You also see a lot of
Hmm.
people I identify as, and then comes something that makes sense or something that for a lot of people doesn't make sense. But this is also part of masking, right? So if you really identify as a whatever person, and you say that the world has to accept that, um, that's a bit of a, and that's I think the thing you see uh, that's going to collide when you come into an office environment or wherever you are, where there is a fixed setting of what you should be. And then you show, yeah, I get it. You have to be in the office and it's all nice, but I identify as something that doesn't fit in here, and I want to work here, and you'll just have to accept it. And I mean, on the gender discussion, it might end up with scraping off the signs of the toilets and everyone uses the same toilets. Fine. Um, but I can imagine that it's also a bit of um, a denial kind of thing where, yeah, you're being paid to play a certain role. So no, you can't identify as a whatever you want right now. You can do it in your spare your free time, but not in the office, right? Or is this it doesn't have to do with each
Yeah.
other?
I think the issue of people identifying as whatever they like this era is it's also concerning because it could be, you know, I believe they are also trying to act and wearing a mask because they are either running towards something or running away from something, you know. And the reason why they want to make a switch to identify as something out of the ordinary, right? It has to be part of whatever experience in their life. If you look back in whatever trauma they must have passed through in their past self, what was it? A movie they watched? Was it a sermon they heard from somebody? I mean, for example, let's say let's talk about religion, for example. Most people in any religion um, adopted that religion because probably their parents were in
Yeah,
that religion,
yeah.
right? And very small amount of people actually adopt religion because they heard uh, an outside person, an outsider talk about it.
Hmm.
But that is also, an influence.
Yeah.
And they see it's either probably out of fear because I'm scared something would happen if I don't get it, or I'll get some benefit if I do this, right? And most of the people that I believe most of the people that are identifying as something or this or that right now, they are trying to fit in a specific space because probably, you know, as a man, life is difficult. I can identify as a woman because life will be easier for me, right? I'm trying to fit into
Yeah,
that
and
kind of
then you're
space.
running away from your man
Yeah,
being, right? Yeah,
yeah, and
or the other
also
way around. Yeah.
a lot of companies now have DEI, which enables people to do that and give them extra privileges. They get extra this, extra that. People are trying to get that. Also, I was also reading something online recently about, I don't know if it's a joke. I'm not sure about the specific country. I think it's a country in Europe. And this guy said he identifies as a female soldier. He's a soldier. He's a man. He said he identifies as a female soldier, and because he identifies as a female soldier, he's getting almost double the salary. He's getting a lot of extra benefits,
Hmm.
which his male counterparts are not getting, just
Okay.
because he identifies as something. So, those kind of things is what people look into. They try to fit in something or try to run away from something for whatever benefit they get from it.
Hmm.
And the consequences later, they don't know what the consequences would be. That's why a lot of them become
Well,
depressed afterwards and try to
I
come back. And
I think it's a thing where we, if you want to do that, that's your own right. You can do whatever you want, but don't expect the world to accept that per se. I mean, there's an example which came across in the Netherlands. There was a person that tattooed their whole body, including their
mm,
eyeballs. So the
yeah,
white on their eyeballs was tattooed as well. Um, and then the person complained that they didn't get a job. No one would hire the person. And then I went like, yeah, but you have an unerasable mask on all the time, which makes it incredibly scary to even be around you for most people. Blacked out eyes are not a sign of health, or it's scary as shit. And then
yeah,
they complain about I'm not being accepted as for the person I am. Well, yeah, well, that's not a right, maybe, or is it? And that's
no, it's not.
the question, because it's not tied to race or religion. It's just tied to self-inflicted damage, basically. And then this person complains, and to make it worse, the in one occasion the eyeball tattooing went wrong, and the person went blind, and then he went like, now I can't even work because I'm blind. And then I'm like, oh my god, people are so dumb. What the fuck? Well, but that's just a weird example, which is extreme. But I think
Mhm.
for a large part, the challenge for people coming out of the a world online where they have the idea they should always be able to be whoever, whatever, whenever they want to, and they come in an office environment where people go, over a work environment where people go like, no, I want you to fit in this box because that's what we pay you. That's the role you're playing. Put on that uniform, if it's physical or not, and act like that. So on the one hand, I think sometimes companies make that box too little, and they actually hurt themselves with it, because with that too small box comes certain behavior which the company doesn't need or like. And on the other hand, I think yeah, if people pay you for your time, they can ask you to behave in a certain way, right? So I don't think that's
Yeah,
really weird, but yeah. So the juggle is to be authentic enough within that space. And if this is the space and you fit in like for 90%, it's gonna be easy, right? 10% is fine. But if you you live outside that box and you have 0% of coverage with that, yeah, you're gonna have a hard time fitting in. But yeah, I think we covered the relationship masking, like in my example with my extrovert wife being while being introverted, but also in work and in development and cultural.
mhm,
This has been an interesting journey.
yeah,
This is me trying to wrap up because we're out of time. So I don't know if you have
yeah.
any final statements on
Um,
this.
not really. Besides what we've both mentioned. It's difficult to fit in, even though we have to fit in. We have to wear some masks sometimes. or most of the times, or every time actually, because we don't really know our true identity, and we might never know. And even if you do know your true identity, you can't always express yourself 100% of the time. So you have to put on some acts and act in a certain way. It's one of the things, even the choice of words we say, like if someone is not behaving well, you say, get your act together. So you have to act in a certain way. And behavior also, it's like acting. You have to behave a certain way, it's acting. So we live in a world where we have to fake everything, as bad as it sounds. But um, I hope in another universe, the people or creatures there can immediately identify or know the kind of person they are, and there are structures or cultures or whatever it is in their universe to accept and understand people's identity, and they can be themselves. For our universe,
But
it's too late.
ending with that, I think if you were a shark, you wouldn't be worried about your identity. You would be a shark because that's what you do. You go sharking. All right. Well, thanks, Tuna, and see you next week.
All right. Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye.